CPA with an MBA.
It is a very important subject because I think the future of the city depends on it. And what I'm talking about is a multi-year financial budget for the city, not the once-a-year plans that we have today. Any well-managed entity always looks to the future. They always look out beyond the horizon. And I worked in the corporate world for many, many years, and all the companies I've ever worked with, we always produce multi-year plans. What happens in the city of LA is everything, or most of the things that we need to run this city end up in one big pot, and that is called the general fund. And it's just like a big washing machine. It just gets churned around and around and around, and nobody really has their hands on it. And that's really a shame, because it's not because the mayor and the city council don't have the data. They do have the data, but they simply don't have either the courage or the commitment to use it. Now, that doesn't surprise me when you consider our environment, where something like, I think 80% of our general fund outlays are related to compensation one way or the other, be it salaries, retirement plans, health benefits. And when you consider we have large, powerful unions like the SEIU and the IBEW, it doesn't surprise me that the mayor and the city council will push problems conveniently into the next year rather than try to deal with it at the moment. And it's not rocket science, by the way, because other government entities use multi-year financial planning. Orange County, just to the south of us, is a perfect example. I've looked at their site, and it's beautiful what they have. Not only do they use a multi-year plan, but just the information that's available in electronic form is so far superior to what we get from the city. You know, it's very difficult even for the biggest geeks and wonks to go through the information that the city has.
Since you're talking a lot about the city, and I'm just kind of speaking off the cuff here, I work for a council member who sits on the budget committee. I did want to just point out a couple of things as far as background. First of all, as far as the 5 years, there's a budget document we produce every year called the Revenue Outlook. It's on the website. And one of the things it does is it provides a 5-year outlook for revenue for the city. If you look on it for this year in particular, it's a little bit depressing because it shows revenues actually dropping next fiscal year. It starts climbing back the year after, but it's still below where we are now. The following fiscal year, we're barely above where we are now. So not until 2013, 2014 do we see any increase in revenue. And then after that, hopefully we're okay. The way the city works, local government, we feel the impact of the economy a year or two after. So we're going through now what the American public went through a year ago, 18 months ago. So you can imagine right now our coffers are pretty bare. We're actually doing basically a budget twice a year now, similar to the state. So long term, this is an interesting discussion. But as far as right now, you asked about whether or not staff can do these types of things, the answer is no. If you listen to Budget and Finance on Monday, I just really encourage you all to listen. It'll be an interesting conversation. We're going to be talking about whether we stop hiring police officers starting in November. So that's what we're preoccupied about right now, is what are we doing in November, and are we going to continue to keep people enrolled in the police academy? My boss is one of the folks who said yes, and the others said no. Council seems to be split. That's a record, man. Look it up. Anyway, so that's what the council's talking about. We also have an operational plan talking about making more cuts above the 10% cuts we already made. So interesting. I mean, my only small comment is if you're going to do budgeting, 2-year budgeting is an interesting concept. Wendy Girls talked about it. I think my boss has said he likes the idea. 5-year budgeting, no one does that. We already have revenue outlook for it. The revenue changes so much in a 5-year period, you do not know what your revenue is going to be. So it would be, I think, probably a bad use of your time and resources. But 2-year budgeting, I think a lot of people have said is a good reform. But otherwise, the context of the conversation right now, this is maybe not the best moment to have these conversations, but you should definitely be taking part in listening to these conversations and taking positions on issues like police hiring, because that's the kind of stuff we're focused on right now.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Eric.
Just a comment on that. I'm aware of the 5-year plan. I already referenced it here. As I said, it is non-binding. You guys are only using it as a tool to prepare your current year budget. It is not stopping you from pushing things off into subsequent years. So my question, and this is more of a rhetorical question, I don't expect you to answer it, but what have you guys been doing over the last few years? This economic situation we're in was not a surprise. Maybe the severity of it was, but people knew a few years ago that we were headed towards problems, and they went on with life as usual.
Yep.
Thank you. Jack.
All right, so Jack.
I'm Jack Humperville, Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council, and I've written a few articles about the budget. I like to think I'm fairly decent with numbers. I have the persistence to maybe sit in bed and read some of these things, but this is beyond the pale. Here is this year's budget. All 1,600 pages, but there's nothing really going out very far. 1,600 pages to read through. We have all sorts of different fund accounting. The monies move all over God's creation. The second point that these budgets don't look at is they don't look at what I call sustainable funding. We heard about Bill Robertson today talking about sidewalks. Sustainable funding is having a plan and going out and maintaining your roads, maintaining your infrastructure, your sewer, your storm waters, your buildings, your information technology. So they're telling us the budget's balanced, but it's being balanced off of the infrastructure. They're not funding it, and it's going to come back and bite us in the ass big time. They are telling us the budget is balanced. We'll see. I have a slight suspicion we're going to be a little cash short. But the issue is in addition to this year, they're projecting a budget deficit next year of $800 million. Yep. So if you think we have problems this year, honey, you know, you ain't seen nothing yet. Thank you.
It also gets back to my earlier point. Yes, things like infrastructure has been ignored, and that's because of people haven't had their feet held to the fire in terms of long-term budgeting. They've always been able to push things off year after year and after year, hoping that we forget. So we need to make them produce long-term balanced projections, formal balanced projections.
I really have a question. I'm Steve Twining. I am also a CPA and an MBA. The fact of the matter is, what happens if the city goes bankrupt? Would that require a 5-year plan?
That would be up to the judge in bankruptcy.
Because Bernard Parks, the chair of the budget committee, indicates that at the rate we're going, we will be bankrupt by next spring.
I'm betting that there's a good chance that will happen, okay? But it still doesn't relieve us of, the obligation to do our best to plan. Eventually, we will, even let's say if we do go into bankruptcy, just like Orange County did back in the 1990s, we'll come out of it, okay? We'll be restructured. All the more reason to have the ability to produce long-term plans after that so we don't dig ourselves into the same hole. But, yeah,
So there's no requirement if, the bankruptcy judge wouldn't require a 5-year plan?
The bankruptcy judge is going to do whatever he wants to get the city back on the right track. That's my understanding. He's not going to micromanage us, but he's going to make sure that we have our numbers together and that we have a plan that when we come out of the bankruptcy, we're going to survive. Otherwise, he'll just keep us in bankruptcy.
So we're going to call the question on this. We took 2 comments and we're going to call the question, and then we're going to move into an action. Okay? So, what's that? Yeah, we do. Should neighborhood councils promote and support an effort that would require the mayor to propose and the city council to adopt a balanced budget for the forthcoming year and at the same time balanced budgets for the following 5 years? That's the proposal, the proposition. All in favor, if you'll raise your hand. $37 in favor. All those opposed to this proposition? All those opposed to a 5-year budget? 1? 2?